DMT.
Last time I did it, there was
No. You get back. That wasn't an invitation to come into my video and ruin it. Come on now, head off. Anyways, DMT is a very no. I said get back, bro.
fuck you.
Jeez. DMT is a very strange substance. The human brain possesses the enzymatic machinery to produce DMT.
What the does that mean, Kobe Bryant?
Basically, there are two enzymes in the brain that, when combined, create DMT. One of these areas is, in fact, the pineal gland, which is a very mystical part of the brain. And people have said that it is, the seat of your soul, and it is also where your third eye is. What is also weird is that many people's pineal gland are calcified due to fluoride and heavy metals, and many speculate that this calcification hinders you in a spiritual way, aka don't produce DMT and you become retarded, okay? But anyways, that's a tangent and a half. Let's get to do this, we're gonna have to go back a couple centuries. There were tribes in South America that would brew a tonic, a potion, a quencher, a tea called ayahuasca. Say that 5 times fast. No, go ahead, try it. It's actually kind of hard. Ayahuasca. Hold on. Ayahuasca. Shit, I can't do it. Okay, anyways, this tea included just 2 ingredients. These 2. I'm not going to try and say these because I don't want to. I'm going to fuck it up. Now, the first one. This one is a shrub, and it's riddled with DMT. Now, the problem with DMT is that your body breaks it down very fast. It'll be out of your system in about 10 minutes, okay? Now, the reason for this is because of these guys. The monoamine oxidase enzymes. They break down the DMT molecule, but that is where the second ingredient to this tea comes into play. It is monoamine oxidase inhibitors blocking the production of the monoamine oxidase enzymes. It's the perfect solution. So the high goes from 10 minutes to a couple of hours.
Yes, science!
Fast forward to the 1950s. DMT was synthesized in a cave with a box of scraps. No, I'm joking. But it took a decade for DMT to become pretty well known in the US. And when it did, people started to use it for fun. You're like, let's go to this mystical world, let's go hang out with some elves. I do that. It sounds pretty fucking cool. Then the government had to come in and ruin everybody's fun. They classified DMT as a Schedule 1 drug. Not cool, yo. We all know the government's motto. Rules for thee and not for me. Alex Jones.
That's Hillary.
Yes, that Alex Jones.
Lex Luthor meets Adolf Hitler looks with blue eyes, and they just didn't know what to do.
Still, yes, that same Alex Jones.
Look, we came, we saw, we died.
We're gonna break your will, Hillary. We already have.
We came.
Alright, you get the idea. This guy's a little cuckoo, but he's right a lot of the time. I said it, sue me. He was saying that there are government agencies that are using DMT in a secret alien base near San Francisco to communicate and broker deals with interdimensional beings. Yeah, you weren't expecting that one, huh? And if you were, hell yeah, that's fucking dope. Anyways, Alex Jones is saying that there are high-level individuals, let's call them, that are hooked up to a DMT drip, so they can stay and talk with these beings for many, many hours. Enough with Mr. Joe.
I like women with big, giant tits and big asses.
No, I said enough. Be gone from me. Be gone. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Let's Let's talk about some of the common hallucinations and entities that happen during a DMT trip. So around 94% of people that have done DMT have met sentient beings, and they describe them as aliens or machine elves or like fucking praying mantises doing brain surgery on you. It gets crazy in DMT land, dude. And 100% of people have transported to a hyper-real, otherworldly world. Yeah. The majority of people claim that these entities are benevolent and they trust them and they feel love from them. But the minority, no, not that minority, of people become fearful or scared. Now, I'm going to bring it up. There's a theory that these beings are actually demons, okay? And they're trying to disguise themselves as angels, you could call them, or just like these benevolent creatures to influence you. And, you know, demon you. Is demon a verb? I don't know. With all of that said, let's indulge in some trip reports. These get pretty wild. I'm pretty excited to share them with you. Let's go. Fighting the DMT spirit. This is an experience of smoking DMT while on a plateau in a come down from methadone. The methadone was nice, empathetic, euphoric, and stimulating. I had smoked a bunch of strong weed as well and drank a little wine. I decided to smoke some DMT. I tried a few times, but without too much success. I only managed to vaporize a little and had mild but interesting DMT trips. They were not unpleasant, although on one I did see a lizard alien type creature amid the closed eyes hallucination. I have seen them before, and though I think it is rather superstitious of me, it always slightly alarms me. For the most part, however, these experiences were slightly euphoric, transcendent, and pleasant experiences, but emboldened by the methadone, I thought that just wasn't enough. I put 60 milligrams of DMT into the bowl of my bong on top of some weed and vaporized most of it in 2 big hits. The high dose DMT experience is utterly different than a moderate or low dose experience for me. I crossed the threshold. My field of vision contemplated an empty black space in the center with morphing 3-dimensional geometric shapes grading on both sides. I remember the high-dose DMT space and the fact that it transforms reality into something completely unrecognizable. Though not necessarily beautiful or transcendent, in fact for me, it was more likely to be colorful but somewhat flat, machine-like, and even cartoonish. I realized I was tripping extra hard and that the experience was about to just take over completely. For just a second, I wondered if this was going to be a breakthrough. Then, I felt myself being propelled forward at astonishing speed. However, I could tell that I was being propelled towards something I might not want to experience at all. My resistance and fear took hold. Within less than a second, I saw my destination. It was the DMT spirit personified as a female demon. I had met her before, only once, on my first ever DMT experience, in which she welcomed me and told me she was the Queen of Spice. As I looked into her face with horror, her voice told me, "Welcome to your nightmare." With a rush, I was being sucked down into an experience that I had created for myself, or that the DMT entity had created for me. It was going to be my ultimate nightmare, tailor-made just for me. It looked like it was going to have a prosaic real-world theme, being tortured or something unpleasant, but transformed and reconfigured into the machine-like fractalizing cinematic totality of the high-dose DMT experience. Something within me revolted. I used my fear and willpower to direct myself from the nightmare tunnel. I cleared an empty space for myself in my consciousness and told the DMT entity or entities that I would not submit to this, that I had not come into their space for this experience, and that I sought higher goals. Truth, not nightmare scenarios fractalized and engineered by hostile entities. Transcendence, not a sci-fi DMT horror show. I could now see a male DMT entity, or more properly at that time, the DMT entity. He was not a tyke or elf or alien, but the spirit of the substance, a resplendent god, part South American indigenous deity, part futuristic machinic being, and he was angry. I had refused his gift and possibly his woman who bore the gift as well. He roared at me, infuriated by my disrespect and refusal to go along with the evening's planned entertainment. Within moments, I was subjected to what I could only think of as a magical attack. The DMT entity was breaking my reality into pieces, rapidly throwing things at my consciousness and essentially toying with me, showing me what he could do. I was afraid, but in some way I was buoyed by my ability to withstand the attack and to have enough control to not have to submit to the nightmare scenario. As my consciousness splintered in my mind, I was able to word a simple phrase of resistance: I don't care. This seemed to be the spell I needed to rob the DMT entity of his anger. He relented and the attack stopped. If I didn't care, what was the point? Still, I felt his displeasure at my lack of respect and cooperation. As suddenly as it started, it was over. I was back in my room. Less than 5 minutes had passed. I felt utterly drained, exhausted, disappointed, and confused. I seek insights from DMT. I seek beauty. I seek the otherworldly, the transcendent, the numerous. Instead, I was taken over by a hostile and superficial experience, threatened with my personalized ultimate nightmare, and subjected to magical attacks. I checked myself and realized that overall I felt okay. I had survived without much consequence. An avid pot smoker, my forgetting skills are sharply honed, and I decide not to let this trouble me much further. But I still wondered, if the DMT gods hate me, if I reject their gifts of nightmares, what can I expect from use of this substance in the future? Alien abduction in hyperspace. In the recent past and current present, I have been experimenting with large doses of DMT. I started off with lower doses at first, getting a mild DMT body high and visuals, similar to the peak of an LSD or psilocybin mushroom trip, only lasting around 5 to 10 minutes, which sounds about right. I was getting to these levels at first with a group of friends, as so were they, but none of us ever came close to breaking into hyperspace. I started to have my doubts, but knew that there was still more to the substance. I perhaps just hadn't perfected the technique in smoking it out of an oil burner or glass vaporizer. It wasn't until recently when I finally perfected the process in vaporizing and smoking the substance and reaching a hyperspace of some sort. Colors would randomly appear in front of me, merging within everything, becoming one. It was an amazing thing, an amazing feeling, an amazing experience like no other, I thought to myself. I was getting to this place, assuming that this place was the highest level of DMT, and assuming that this was the hyperspace everyone was talking about. However, I was wrong. The first time it happened, I was in my apartment, by myself, away from friends, family, all of that. I did it sitting in a pretty comfortable chair I got for Christmas one year, which was set up in my room. I was able to get around 3 very long big hits when it happened. It wasn't really like being shot out of a cannon into hyperspace or anything like that, but something different. It was more, well, it was in fact a teleportation. I was teleported into an alien spaceship compartment, flying through space. I don't mean like it was kind of like an alien spaceship, or I thought it was an alien spaceship. No, it was an alien spaceship. There were no colors everywhere, or it wasn't like a travel through hyperspace or anything that happened to me in the past. This was so real, so detailed. It was so detailed in every way. It was like I was really there in a spaceship. It was reality. I wasn't dreaming, tripping, anything like that. I was actually there. The entire time I sat there, not being able to move, but just gaze in amazement. I felt a presence. I felt an alien presence above me, like they were watching me, observing me, like they were talking to me telepathically, communicating with me through thought, trying to show me things, or perhaps they were trying to experiment with me. I was so afraid, confused, yet amazed at all the same time. It seemed like I was there for almost an hour, and maybe I was. My perception of time was out of the window. My mind was in shock. The last thing I remember while being in that spaceship is a strong telepathic signal from one of the aliens that triggered something inside of me. I was able to look down at my legs, my arms, and see my bones twisting and turning, my hair building thicker and thicker. I was turning into a monkey. It was so real. I just can't stress that enough. I was totally freaking out when everything suddenly teleported back to my room, back to my reality. However, through the hyperspace, through the aliens had... However, though the aliens had left, I was tripping hard. Everything around me was twisting and turning. My bones would still twist and turn if I looked at them long enough. When I looked in the mirror, I looked like I was an alien. Everything was just off, and it was so intense. That lasted for at least 30 minutes or so, which finally faded as I laid in my bed, not being able to stop thinking, not being able to sleep. My entire body, mind, and spirit was in awe. The next day I told my roommate everything that happened, and he, like myself, were always fascinated by DMT, and always joked about alien life forms and conspiracy theories and junk. However, he was very afraid of actually going to the places that was described as the DMT hyperspace, and as much as he enjoyed reading and understanding the drug, he would not do it. He wasn't ready. After a long discussion on what I had experienced, I was actually convinced that I was contacted with a very intelligent alien life form through DMT. I had this crazy theory, like the aliens knew I had DMT and were trying to contact me, show me things while I could see them when my third eye was activated. Crazy, right? Anyways, my friend said I should try it again tonight and see if I have a similar experience. I concluded that I would in fact try it once again later that night. I did it in the same place, around the same time, with the same dose. Everything around me instantly began to change. It was so alien, so unbelievable. I could see energy coming up my body, telepathically communications all through in and throughout my body. Energy shifting around me, life as I know it showing me that there is so much more than the simple physical realm of fantasy I live in. I was being told instantly that aliens were in fact very real. I knew that if this is happening right now, right here, then there is no way they are not real. It was so unexplainable, so intense, so real. It was nothing I had ever heard throughout readings on internet or books about the drug. I was out of control. Life was out of control. I was in the middle of another transportation, except it was so much more intense. Right before my eyes, I left the physical realm. I was able to look down and see once again my bones twisting and turning everywhere, my hair growing. I look up to scream, but it was too late. My head is thrown back as my spirit or brain is transformed into pure energy. I am now flowing through a network of systems, and I am one with the aliens. I am what they are. I am super intelligent. I know all the secrets of the world. Bam, just like that. Constant super intelligent information is transmitted into my brain by the aliens, who are energy like me. It all comes to me. The ultimate understanding rhythms of the human conspiracy about life's deepest concepts can be broken into by the journey to an intergalactic hyperspace of universes. What the fuck? Enduring into these worlds will produce realities of self-inflicted fantasies. However, they are real. Your body is at place while your spirit is trying to leave and show you extraordinary things. Your mind will learn what your spirit has learned, and in the end, your ultimate individuality will grow as a force here on the planet of Earth. Noisy sensations of parallel feelings towards distinction, triumph, and immortality like realities slam our brains from every single most exact dimensional layers according to the most advanced properties of physics. They're playing with me, laughing at me, showing me their world, explaining the many secrets of alien life and the many secrets of the physical realm I have been living on. I know everything. I knew that I knew it was right. I still think it might be right. I am one with everyone. I am the universe. I can produce 1,000,000 words into an actuality at once, and so can they. It was the most beautiful world of colors and life, fairies and aliens, ghosts and angels. It was everything. It was the spiritual realm of existence, and they loved me so much. They told me so much. and they told me that I could come back whenever I wanted, and to bring as many friends as possible, because they will show them everything too. When I started to finally come back to reality, I wasn't afraid about anything anymore. I didn't question life anymore, and this is because I actually believe that I was just taught all of the secrets of the world. Right before I left the spiritual world, I was enhanced with a supercharge of energy, allowing me to have the most intense mind expansion anyone had ever imagined. I could create and do anything in my mind and see it like it was happening. I had a rush of euphoric, more intense than the greatest LSD and mushroom euphoria put together by a million. I still was in touch with aliens, but I could not see them. Not physically, that is. This feeling lasted for at least an additional 40 to 50 minutes after the heaven had just left. I smiled, looking down at the text from my roommate who had been staying at his girlfriend's that week. Well, what happened, man? How did it go? Did you see aliens again? I didn't even respond. I didn't have to, because I knew that the physical realm was nothing more than an illusion. I knew that the spiritual realm, the infinite realm, was and would always be the more beautiful and more intelligent realm. I knew this because the aliens knew this. I was filled with the greatest feelings I have ever felt. It was the greatest experience I had ever experienced. It was better than anything real, better than anything here. I then knew to myself that I had become addicted. Physically, no, but my mental mysticism and desire was so intensely obsessed about what was going on. For the remainder of the night, I listened to some trance techno for a few hours and then fell asleep like a baby. Remember having some very intense dreams with memories of seeing the aliens while I was asleep. When I awoke, my roommate had come back and was so curious, so concerned about what happened. I remember his exact words. "Dude, what the hell happened last night? Look at this crazy text you sent me." I looked at his phone and smiled. Even though I should have been freaked out, it was a text from me that said, "We have shown your friend everything he needs to know. We want you too." What the fuck, dude? This is weird. I didn't remember texting that at all. My friend was starting to worry and kind of freak out. What is going on, man? Is this really happening? Are these things really happening to you? Or are you messing with me? I look down now, confused again. Is this real? Do I even know what real is anymore? What is happening to me? I think I'm either actually discovering the secrets of the world or I'm slowly slipping into insanity. Oh my. That night, I sat there, looking at it, looking at the DMT loaded in the pipe, ready to go. What should I do, I thought. I have to go back to where I was. They told me I could go back whenever I wanted. It was decided. I did it in the same place, around the same time, with the same dose. Energy began to flow like before. Alien telepathic communications were strong. I began to look up and close my eyes, only to be shot back into that mystical alien spaceship I was in before the hyperspace heaven. I was on one of those machines that carry stuff in like a factory, being rolled through some kind of processor data analyzer machine, seeing the aliens all around me, looking down at me, angry. They were so intimidating, angry, upset, mad at me, but I didn't know why. I wasn't in the beautiful place that they had taken me before, but I was in a more physical realm, but different dimension. They were just looking at me, sucking all the intelligence out of me that they had given me before, angry at me for some reason. I didn't know why. I didn't know what I did. I didn't understand. I was shot out of the spaceship quicker than normal and back kind of sort of to my reality, except my body was once again changing as I looked at it. My hands were complete monkey along with my big hairy arms. I felt like I was actually a monkey, and I thought I'd begin to scream like a monkey. I felt lost. I felt like a part of my brain was crazy, and I was no longer super intelligent, and there was no more strong, intense euphoria like before. What had happened? After I was completely down, I began to really rethink reality and what was happening to me in the past week. Perhaps it was time for me to leave the substance alone for a while. I need a week or so to settle down, think about what happened, try and figure out what was going on. I needed help, I thought, not from a doctor. I wasn't completely crazy yet. I'm still in touch with my own reality, but I'm very well beginning to question reality like no other time in my life. I feel as though I had broken through into another level of DMT, that I had went to a level past DMT, made contact with the other side, like they had connected to me. The things that happened to me were nothing like a drug. Nothing like LSD or anything like it could ever do what this has done, not even close. This substance was something else, a key to our chemical structure, a key to our DNA, a key to life. I thought I had been living in a science fiction horror movie, and I was quite possibly on the edge of going insane. I just don't know what to think about all of this. Accepting the evil and ego death. When I venture into my DMT trip, the last thing I was expecting was the ego death. I'd happened to have a readily available and reliable source of DMT and was bored one night, so decided to do it. It was my second time doing DMT, my first trip being around 30 milligrams. This was a very mild trip and did not really excite me much of the potential of a DMT trip. I remember emotionally connecting with and communicating with a microwave and some brief breathing visuals, but not much else. Nothing very intellectual or deep. With this experience in mind, I decided to up my dosage to 55 milligrams, looking for a much more intense trip. Not necessarily ego death, but at least an intense DMT trip that I had read is associated with this drug. I ended with a life-changing experience and possibly one of the best and worst drug experiences of my life. So I weighed out 55 milligrams. The burn is not instantaneous, but it hit me in about 10 minutes and got progressively worse until my trip was over. The burn was bad, though not nearly as bad as the burn from railing 8 milligrams of 2CE. All I can remember was repeatedly saying, "Why did I do this to myself?" Then, the intense and slightly scary patterns and psychedelic open-eye visuals began occurring, as well as a slight body buzz, and the desk I was sitting at was breathing with me amazingly. Each time I breathed in, the desk would expand and move more than I've ever seen it before on any psychedelic, expanding inches at a time, as I thought it was more alive than I were. I felt nauseous for about 1 minute and had an empty black trash can by my side in case I were to vomit. During the minute I felt as though I would vomit, I held the trash can to my face and looked into it, preparing for vomit to expel from my mouth. Instead, when I looked into the trash can, it was as if I was going to be sucked into a black hole of death, evil, and darkness if I were to puke into it. In that moment, I felt as though an outside force was taking over my body, as if my entire body was no longer mine to control. Although I had read many ego death experiences on psychedelics and have friends who had recounted their experiences to me, I did not realize that the amount of DMT I took had the possibility to lead to ego death, and was certainly not ready for it, if it was even possible to be. Feeling entirely scared and unprepared, I convinced myself not to throw up and not to succumb to the black hole of darkness that was present in the trash can, and came back for air, breathing deeply. The moment I regained control of my body, all I could say was, "I think I'm gonna die," and began frantically asking my friend to assure me that people have done more DMT than I did and that I was going to be alright. It was the most physically painful thing I have ever been through, and I was scared beyond belief. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of the trip, and that in the remaining portion, I was in for the ride of my life. I needed to lie down and be in darkness. I had my friend turn off all the lights and made my way to the bed in the room. Controlling my body, attempting to move and walk was also foreign to me. It was as if I had a 600-pound body, a massive amount of weight that I simply could not control. I felt like Bambi, attempting to walk for the first time. Luckily, the bed wasn't too far, and I was able to make my way onto it, lying down while experiencing excruciating physical pain. I told myself that whatever it was that was going on with me, no matter how terrifying, I'd gotten myself into this, and at this point had no other option but to face it and come out on the other side. At this point, all the lights were off. I was in total darkness and had requested that my friend no longer speak to me. All I could do was succumb to the trip, to everything bad taking over my mind, and write it out the best I could. I closed my eyes and immediately closed-eyed visuals occurred. There were cloaked skeleton figures with piercingly evil red and green lasers, like light projecting from their eyes, and I could tell that they were there to take me, for lack of better words. These were the most evil beings I had ever experienced in my entire life, but I had no choice but to succumb to their evil and follow the steps that they were leading me on. I'd covered my entire face and body with a black comforter, to isolate myself from any grounding or worldly physical thing, as I felt I had to go through this alone and depart from my existent reality. The next 15 or so minutes was the most intense trip I have ever been on in my entire life. At this point, I was physically writhing in pain, or at least I felt like I was, and was crying like mad. I was so scared. The cloaked beings and I were traveling through a tunnel of this evil green and red fluorescent piercing light, flying past me, and it was if I was on the world's fastest and darkest roller coaster, yet simultaneously felt as though I was stationary and not making any progress through this tunnel. All I wanted to do was get to the other side. Progressively through this part of the trip, the piercing light and closed-eyed visuals became less and less as the darkness was gradually taking over. And when I traveled through the tunnel, everything eventually turned pitch black. When I reached the point of ego death, as if all the good and light had been taken out of the world. Emotional pain, however, was just about to begin. The first thing I had to do in this journey, on these steps that the cloaked creatures were leading me on, was to let go of every inhibition I had, and for me mostly my physical insecurities and inhibitions. I could no longer care about something as trivial as my physical being or appearance. I had to let go in order to be consumed. I could no longer be in control of my physical body. So I let go and stopped caring about control as the snot and tears ran down my face. Then they had me focus on the worst experience, the lowest feeling I had ever felt in my entire life. For me, this was a detailed experience with my dad that I won't get into, but let's just say that I had to focus on the intense amount of pain that I felt at that time. The cloaked figures proceeded to flash previous psychedelic experiences of mine before me, each of which turned into pictures which were lit on fire by the laser, like light shot out of their eyes, exploding and bursting into flames before me. These spirits were angry at me for avoiding ego death in these previous experiences, and assured me that the person who had saved me and grounded me back to reality, allowing me to avoid ego death previously, would not help me in this time. Although the person was not physically around me during these previous experiences, was not on this one. I feel that his actual physical presence had little to do with this. The cloaked figures continued to have me focus on my most painful experience, what had to be the worst amount of physical and emotional pain I had ever felt in my entire life. The whole time I was crying violently, breathing so sharply and heavily, almost as if I was physically dying by running out of air to breathe. Besides being emotionally painful, it was incredibly physically painful. Plus, I could still feel the throbbing pain from the burn in my nose, as if it was causing pain to my entire body. Some outside force was controlling my body, and the only way I can describe it would be as the opposite of an exorcism. I began to have this conversation in my head with the cloaked figures about my father and all the pain and anguish I felt toward him. I focused on how awful he was, how it was unbelievable that anyone could ever put their own flesh and blood, someone they created through the most intimate act, through so much pain, how he was supposed to care for me, and how the pain he had made me feel was unbelievable and surreal in the worst way. Reaching the conclusion that there was no good in him, I continued to have this conversation in my head with the cloaked figures, talking in circles, repeating the same thing over and over again, until the cloaked figures presented my dad, and I was now having this conversation directly to him, getting more and more progressively angry as it went on. But that never reached a definite end. The next thing I had to do on this journey was to forget all the good in the world. Everything that could have possibly kept me grounded to a worldly reality, anything that was possibly any remote good to continue living for. I had to believe in this genuinely. It couldn't be faked, as the cloaked figures could sense everything. I had to forget that my friend trip-sitting me in the room existed, and the friend who had prior saved me from ego death also had to be discredited as not having any good or anything worth living for, as it was thinking he was there for me and worth living for that he had saved me from ego death previously. I had to focus on all the bad qualities about him and turn him into something evil, and believe that there was nothing good in him. That's why he couldn't and wouldn't save me. Soon a picture of him appeared and exploded as well in the same manner as previously described. The cloaked creatures were right. He could no longer save me. Then, there came the final step. In order to complete this process, I had to admit everything I was thinking, everything that was running through my head by saying it out loud. It was as if I had to prove that I believed it all to these cloaked figures, but also to myself, and that the only way to do that was to say it. That was the ultimate way to succumb to their control, to have all inhibitions forgotten, to forget myself and my own ego. I knew it would seem crazy, but I had to do it. I had no other choice. So I began at the beginning, recounting to myself the issues with my father, saying it all out loud. It felt as though I was emotionally and angrily screaming it through my trips. Though my trip sitter said he never understood a word as it was faint and whispered. Then I moved to admitting my friend was not good, but bad, and that he couldn't save me. I had to give up all the good I could think of that mattered to me, and believe that it didn't exist. Finally, I had to say my final thoughts out loud. I said clearly and definitively out loud, but what my friend described as an inaudible, "It is all bad. There is no good left in the world. There is nothing good worth living for. Nothing good. Nothing. None." I felt this intense amount of emotion as I truly believed what I had just said. Then it all went pitch black and I died. I embraced everything evil in the world through my own painful life experiences, so much so that I truly believed that good did not exist in the world, and that there was nothing worth living for in order to die. I had to believe it, and when I did, the journey with the cloaked figures was over, and I died succumbing to the pitch blackness, losing the most ultimate control of my life. Unfortunately, my friend's roommate came into the room right at this point noisily and turned on the lights, and the trip was lost. I never did get through to the other side of that tunnel. I never got to see what was on the other side of death, or to attempt to recover from the scariest experience of my entire life. But I did ego death, and it was amazing. The best way to describe it would be the most painful experience, but the best learning experience I have ever gone through on any psychedelic. After effects included a feeling of rebirth, as if everything was brand new, and an intense new appreciation for everything in life, including small, insignificant things. It was totally worth it. The only upset was the unbelievably large amount of mucus being produced by my nose afterwards. Regardless of all the pain, I'm glad I chose to rail a heavy dose of DMT. I don't think I could expect or be prepared for ego death. I had to just grab it by the horns as it came to me, which is what I did, and I'll never look back.